Now our trailer at the moment, Moaner? Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode in this 1996 Yamaha Wave Raider Restore series. Now for any of you guys that are subscribed to this channel, you know I've got a bit of a thing about restoring old, tired, rusty trailers. For me, there's nothing worse than a nice jet ski set on an old, worn out trailer. I think it says a lot about the owner and the way they look after their ski, and well, this trailer at the moment, it makes me look like a bad owner, and it's letting the team down. So, less talking, let's get into restoring this trailer. So first up is getting a colour match off of one of the red components on the jet ski, because I want to customise the wheel arches, wheel fenders, whether you're in the US or the UK, to a nice red. Now this does require a little bit of tinkering around. Luckily I have a very good friend who runs a car spray paint garage, which has allowed me to borrow these chips.
It's a case of fanning through a number of colour chips until you get a close match. Now do this in the natural daylight because this will give you the best representation of colour match. Now you want a colour match against a similar substrate. In this instance I picked the side plastic pods.
So once you have a colour reference, you'll end up with some of these. One of these and one of these. Now this is the red colour matched to the plastic that I showed earlier, and this is essentially the primer to give us the nice deep red. Now obviously you'll have to source the correct paint to match the colour chips that you selected. Now I used a paint mixing specialist called the Car Paint Warehouse. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to film inside of their mixing lab. As an overview, you can either give them the manufacturer paint chip colour code and they can mix based on your requirements, or they essentially have the colour books and the colour chips themselves, but with much more manufacturers. You will, however, have to take along obviously a reference of colour to be able to match against. Oh, and they do have a fancy scanner. However, from my experience with the 1991 XP, this is a bit temperamental, and normally they default to actually using colour chips anyway. Although it is a fancy little gizmo and one that's quite interesting to see them use. So before I take these fenders off and take them to the sprayers, I've decided I'm going to go for something a little bit more sleeker, something a bit nicer and more round. Something a little bit like these. I mean these.
Okay, so wishful thinking guys, right? I thought I'll try with the actual ratchet, see if I can loosen them up using a bit of WD-40, but the rust was literally layered on to the point where I had to knock it off to actually get the ratchet to fit. So unfortunately, we're gonna have to resort to cutting them off.
Okay, so that was a little bit harder than anticipated. Now a lot of the bolts are quite rusted on in place. You know, salt water does awful things to metal. So all of the bolts, basically the thread to get them back on, it was like, nope, I'm not gonna play along. So essentially I had to find a way to get them off. As you can see, this is not an arts and crafts project. This is to protect the ski. We started with a grinder, but for me, that was a little bit too manic, and I like to be in control, you know? It's always good to actually stop and just think, is this the best way to do something? And then finally, last but not least, where's he gone? We've got this, call it old school if you like, WD-40 to reduce the friction, and I sawed them off. Now, realistically, you're all probably thinking, God, that's probably a slow way of doing it, but at least with this, I have control, and I can keep stopping, evaluating, and for me, this is all about the discovery of the best way of doing these things. So for removing old bolts, this actually proved the best way to do it. I did additionally actually use like a metal punch, with a hammer once I got sort of 3/4 of the way through the bolts, and then just sort of punch them back through, and that worked really, really well. So now that we've got the fenders off, we have an old fender, which for dramatic effect, most YouTubers would throw this over their shoulder, but I'm a little bit too OCD for that. So I'm gonna place that one down and introduce the new one. So the next bit is super important. I want to pre-drill the holes before these go off to get sprayed. Now the reason for this is, if you drill the holes after this has been sprayed, it may seem self-explanatory, but it's gonna chip the paint, you know, you're gonna get some flicking. So you wanna do it before, which means essentially offering it up and actually re-drilling pilot holes through. Start with something small, work your way up so that you don't split the plastic or anything nasty like that. And then we'll have the holes in locations ready for when we'll reattach them, put the new bolts through. I think we might need some new bolts, because these ones are a little bit worn out. So I'm much happier with the look of these. Here's the before and after. So that's one side done. Took a little bit longer than anticipated. Let's go and do the other side. So we're at Cars of Wynford. Mitch, who's the owner of Cars of Wynford, is going to be spraying the fenders today and talking us through the process to give you guys an insight of how you go from colour matching to prepping to spraying and getting the ultimate fenders. So I'm going to get the fenders out of the car and go see Mitch, and let's get this sprayed. Two fenders for you.
Thank you.
And some paint.
All right, sweet. Let's go do it then.
Look at that.
You, what's up? quite Christmas. But it's not. There's nothing under it. It's just more paper.
the fenders are done. They're all nice and red and they've been sprayed, ready to go back on the trailer. They're extremely shiny, so I've got to be careful not to scratch them. So I'm going to put them safely in the boot, put them in lots of bubble wrap, and they'll go on at the end, to the back end of this series. So you'll have to stay tuned for when we reinstall these. There's lots more to do first. checking in the next episode, guys, where we're doing some metal modifications at the welding shop. Bit of a mouthful there, so do the usual thing, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next episode.